All right, welcome. Good morning, everyone. We will have folks, as you're coming in, as always, take a minute and let's disable your video and turn yourself on mute. So I'll go ahead and do that if folks are coming in and need some help. If you have to jump off, I've gotten a couple messages from folks who have to jump off a little early today. That's totally fine. We're still having people really jumping in this morning, so we'll give folks a couple of minutes as you're coming in to just make sure that you are turning off your video and you'll be on mute. Jeff and Eric, we'll pull you in a couple minutes, so we'll give you a cue to join us. Good, great, everybody. Okay. All right, Bridget, if you want to just advance through, we'll really get started. All right, and then, let's go back one. And then is anybody else seeing this? Please remove this window from the shared application. Okay, I don't know, Bridget, that might be something on your side to take care of, because that'll be a little bit distracting in the middle of the yeah, let's try and figure out how we get that get that gone. There we go. Perfect. Good. Well, all right. It might make some reappearances. We'll do what we can. Well, welcome this morning. Just a reminder to folks, we'll have you go on mute, and then as you come in, I'm going to stop your video. It would be helpful if you can stop your own video. So that I don't have to take you out, because it makes it harder to get started again. Okay, Eric, I'll call you in a minute. All right. Okay. Well, let's get started this morning, this Earth Day morning. I am Brianne Sanchez, the Director of Nonprofit Relations here at the Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines, and it is a pleasure to be with you this morning. Again, happy Earth Day and happy Administrative Professionals Day. I wanted to give a shout out on that note to two people who do amazing things during these community circle conversations behind the scenes. Barb Hobson is here with us, and then also Bridget Robinson. If I were to try and manage all the elements of community circles solo while talking to you all, I would look like an octopus or something crazy. So they do a lot behind the scenes for us. And I really just wanted to share my appreciation for them. So thanks again for being here. We will get started with the next slide. And Dustin, I'll call you in here in just a minute. Oop. Okay. All right. Oops. we're having a few technical difficulties on the slides this morning, so we'll get those back. All right, here we go. We're here. Okay, so I just wanted to do a quick recap while everybody is coming in. Last week we talked about leading in times of crisis, that it takes focus, embracing innovation, empathy, and acknowledging the resiliency of our teams. Communication was really a big theme that came up as well, and really internal communications. And then I noticed in our notes, a lot of you are drawing inspiration from quotes and humor. And so I just wanted to give you a little chuckle this morning. So I said, inspirational quote. This is from our friend Cookie Monster. Maybe you all are having kind of the same feelings and eating a cookie when life gets real unpleasant here in the situation that we have. So let's just keep rolling along. Today, we will kick off with some quick and timely updates on relief programs. Then we'll have our presenters from Flynn Wright join us. And then you'll really have a choice of either joining one of the breakout rooms and small group discussions, and we'll be extending our conversation about communication and kind of what each of our organizations is doing, focusing a little bit more externally this week. You'll also have the opportunity to stick around in the main room or come back to leave your breakout and come back to the main room. And we'll have a presentation which Dustin will kind of tee up around. I think unemployment is what we're going to be looking at. So let's keep moving here. And Dustin, if you wanted to just take a minute to get started and kind of kick off what we're going to hear later in the second half.
Yeah, I'll be really brief so that we can get to the real show. I'm interested in hearing from the guys from Flynn Wright. But two quick things. The Senate passed an update yesterday to put more money into the PPP for those of you that weren't successful in getting in that first round. Look for that to pass by the end of the week. So if you're interested in that program, make sure that you're putting together your documents. Also, we've had a lot of really good individual conversations, so please reach out to United Way and the Community Foundation about setting up a time with us, in particular about talking about getting a PPP or potentially talking about just compliance if you have received one. And as she mentioned, in the second half, we're going to have Ryan West and Stephanie Callahan from Iowa Workforce Development. They're going to cover all the different things related to the new unemployment for not your prototypical employees, and then also talking about nonprofit reimbursement that the federal government passed under the CARES Act as well. So that will be recorded, I believe, as well, so that if you don't want to miss your breakout room, you'll be able to see those questions for the back half as well.
Thank you so much, Dustin. You're already old hat at this, and I already have an idea for us for our weekly chuckle next week. We're having a lot of fun now, and I think we're hitting a groove. So, all right, let's go along here. Sally, do you want to join us via video? And let's see if we can get you started to introduce Eric, and then Jeff, if you wanted to join us as well, talk a little bit about what we'll hear today. Tee us up. Thanks, Sally.
Thanks, Brianne, and thank everyone for being here this morning. I think if there's a silver lining to what we're going through, maybe it's that the opportunity to come together more frequently and to work as a community towards tackling some of the challenges that we're all facing and find commonality, learning together and being together. So thank you all for joining us this morning. And I'm delighted to have Jeff White, who is Vice President of Business Development and Strategy, and Eric Nelson, Director of Digital Marketing from Flynn Wright, joining us this morning. I think that most of you probably know that Flynn Wright is a full-service advertising, marketing, PR, research, interactive web company. They do all the things, and they do them extremely well. They have a lot of corporate clients that we're very familiar with. We've seen, Joseph's and Fairway and MediaCom, but they also have a great deal of expertise with nonprofits. They've done good work with the Blank Park Zoo and Friends of Des Moines Parks, and one of my personal ones that stands out for me that they did is the Guardian Project with the Des Moines Police Department, and showing all those amazing photos of our police department. So during a pandemic or not, marketing is one of the top things that we hear that nonprofits need help with, and I can hardly think of anyone better than the team at Flynn Wright to help us navigate this topic a little bit. The deck that Flynn Wright, Jeff, and Eric are going to share was developed for business clients generally, but the content resonates and is relevant to nonprofits as well. Message is message, and call to action is essential, and I think that there are going to be some great things that we can take away from this. So Jeff and Eric, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing your expertise with this group. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you.
All right, thank you, Sally. It's great to be with you all today. So for about the next 20 minutes, we're going to talk about a variety of things related to this new normal and what has become a evolving normal. It's funny how things that seem so far-fetched became normal so quickly over the last few weeks. But we're going to talk particularly about how to market using digital marketing, but really all types of communications, keep audiences engaged during this time. So let's go ahead and click to the agenda slide. So we're going to go through the situation that we've all been experiencing The data that we've seen that shows that there's opportunity to stay connected and even evolve how we do things and be ready for when we go back to the old normal, which we hope is relatively soon. But we're going to be with this for a very long time, so we need to adjust. But there is opportunity there. Didn't seem like there was in the beginning. And then we're going to talk about some things that you can do in your organizations to take advantage of what's happening now and then capitalize on it as we come out of it. So let's click to the next slide and frankly put, we have this new normal, and then let's just go right into it. Let me talk for a second about why we did this in the first place, why we did this presentation. You know, the Des Moines Register has a story this morning that talks about the 3-month mark of this. It actually seems like 3 years. But funny enough, we all didn't really take it seriously, as you know, until about the beginning to the middle of March. And that's when it really started to affect our everyday lives. And particularly our clients, for-profit and nonprofit, came to us and said, what should we do? Or what can we do? It was kind of like 9/11 when Saturday Night Live came back on and they said, is it okay to be funny? Everybody was wondering, is this the right time to be doing anything? Should we market? Should we sell? Should we go dark? And so we went out to our clients and we said, well, let's ask a variety of questions first. Initially, is what you have desired, either from a product or service standpoint or from a message standpoint? And can people get it? Is it accessible? Because that will certainly drive how we communicate going forward. But what you see on the screen here is what organizations did initially. They said, we're here for you. We understand that there's something going on. We're not sure exactly what. We're not sure how long it's going to last, but we're trying to adapt to it best we can. But more importantly, we're thinking of you. But you might remember, it was a long time ago, it seems like, those initial messages were quite vague in what was going to happen going forward because people simply did not know. As we move to the next slide, and as organizations got into phase 2, we were realizing we're going to be here for a little while. And not only do we need to adjust temporarily, but we need to adjust for the foreseeable future. So all of these messages started evolving. We are still here. You can still engage with us. We still want to engage with you. But we were all reacting at that point to, this is something that we're going to be with for quite a long time. And we need to make sure that our constituents are engaged with our organization. Now let's just figure out how to do it. But most importantly, let's identify whether there's opportunity. So as we move into the next phase, that's when everybody said, okay, now what? What kind of data can we find to identify, either within our own organizations or elsewhere through secondary means, what can we put our fingers on that will show us how we communicate with our different audiences, whether they are purchasers or influencers or donors, and what exactly are we asking them to do, and what are we communicating to them as we go forward. So as we click to the next slide, you'll see that we'll start to get into the data because we did identify that there is opportunity here. And that everybody at that point, which is about 4 weeks ago, still wanted to hear from organizations that they worked with, in fact, probably more than ever. Simply put, people were bored. They were all evolving to this work style at home. Some people were unfortunately losing their positions, but they desperately wanted to stay connected with people. And so there was an opportunity then, and there is an opportunity now. Sally actually asked me last week if we have updated this data since we got it about 6 weeks ago. And we have not, but we know that there is still opportunity because we're seeing it with our clients. And Eric's going to speak to that as we get into the stats. So Eric, do you want to start taking us through the numbers that pointed to the opportunity that was then and is still now?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Thanks. And thank you, everybody. With so much news and information, including conflicting information coming out these days, we think it's easy to assume what people's current behaviors are, or worse, succumb to your fears that no one's listening and no one wants to hear from you. But instead, let's listen to the data. So overall, content consumption is actually up, and it's up in a big way. 60% more content is being consumed right now than in the recent past. And we can take a look at a couple of digital marketing tactics specifically. TV viewing is up 11%, and then streaming TV, which we define as Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Hulu, those types of services, is up 13%. And if you have kids like I do, you couldn't be more thankful that Disney streamed Frozen 2 early and that Trolls World Tour is out for rent early too. In fact, you might be able to hear my toddler playing the piano right now. Email activity is also up overall, 27%. And then if anybody has questions later, we'd be happy to answer them. But the two big metrics that we look at when it comes to email success are open rates and click-through rates. So did we get people to open their emails? That's happening at an 11% rate higher than previous. And then click-through rates, once people got into the email, are they clicking through to our desired destination? And that percentage is up 35% currently too. And then social follows, following brands, organizations, artists, musicians, and more are up 14%, while overall web traffic is up 24%. So yes, people are captive at home. And yes, some people are doing things like cleaning out their closets and doing yard work, but the data shows that internet usage is up and content consumption is up too. And why? So we listen to the data about social follows and email engagement. People want to hear from you. Can we go to the next slide and we'll dig in a little bit more about email engagement specifically. Here's the funniest part about those email engagement numbers. When you remove emails from the equation that are COVID-19 related, that we're all familiar with now, the total market is actually sending 19% lower email volume, yet email activity is up. And what that tells us is that the opportunity is there. So think for a second, if you've received an email in the past week that you typically would have deleted, but you opened instead. I know personally, I'm reading more of the e-newsletters or news digests or even things like my nextdoor.com emails that I'd normally delete. I'm reading them right now because I have the time and the opportunity is there because the appetite is there for that information. We can go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about web traffic and social follows. So we talked about both of those being up, but let's take a look at how overall social media usage is up 66%. And that's across all the big players, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even new kids on the block like TikTok. Again, the keyword here is opportunity because people want to escape their current reality. They're turning to their screens in big ways. And while we're all seeing a lot of silly things and memes and whatnot being shared person to person in social, this also provides an opportunity for organizations like yours to provide your valuable, helpful, and engaging message about your organization that's relevant to your desired user. On the next slide, I don't know who the economics majors are in the group, but this is an instance where the supply and demand formula are out the door right now. And it's interesting because in a digital world, a demand for more content, it means higher web traffic, which actually means more inventory for supply. And because of that, digital media is currently highly discounted. So it currently costs 25% less to acquire email data. It currently costs 30% less to syndicate your content and get it in front of more eyeballs. It currently costs 20% less to retarget people who maybe have come to your website and didn't take your desired action. So again, high supply and high demand, yet strangely reduced competition because people are unfortunately listening to their fears right now and staying away rather than listening to the data and taking action, which is what we're encouraging people to do. So again, the opportunity, that's our key word here. We know exactly where customers are right now. They're at home. We're working from home, we're eating from home, we're socializing from home, whether that's via Zoom or Teams or FaceTime or otherwise online, and we are consuming more content from home. So as marketers, as organizations, as people who in a communication role are responsible for talking about our organizations, we must adjust to this new normal of our current stay-home culture and bring our brands to customers' homes. So as it says here, current affairs simply aren't normal. Why would your marketing be? Well, what do we mean by that? So normally marketing probably includes a lot more direct messaging around acquisition, whether that's please donate, please pledge, that sort of thing, retention, more donations, winning people back into the fold or convincing them to do more. But as Sally said up front, message is message. And this is an opportunity to use digital platforms to get your message out in a valuable and engaging way. Let's take a look at the next slide. Thank you. So what we're seeing currently is opportunity. This is interesting, and you'll see here in the next couple of slides. If you're communicating in a way that acknowledges sort of the strangeness of the situation that we're currently in, but in a way that provides value to your end user and also illustrates your brand productively in some way, that's where you win. In fact, when subject lines in emails acknowledge the current situation in a productive, valuable way that matches the value of the brand to the audience, B2B, business to business email open rates are up 41%, and business to consumer open rates are up 34%. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what that message content looks like on the next slide, because this is kind of the I was going to say the meat, and then all of a sudden here, cans of spam. Sorry, that was a coincidence. Here's what's important to think about when we're saying acknowledge the strangeness, but in a way that provides value. There are good ways to do so, and there are bad, spammy ways to do so too. So spam filters right now in your emails are working overtime, and they're being very sensitive to words like corona, virus, COVID, pandemic, mask, sanitizer. The theory here being, unless you're in healthcare and you're treating the virus, or unless you're manufacturing masks or you're manufacturing sanitizer, you probably don't have a place to discuss these things. So really, as you're thinking about your messaging, one of the factors in your messaging matrix ought to be, is this relevant to both me and to my target audience? Is it believable for me? And is it something I can own? If so, move forward. And if not, reconsider what your message looks like. Calls to action are another place where we need to move away currently right now from the things like FOMO and urgency and borderline scare tactics that we've become so used to. Hurry, last chance, don't miss, today only. And instead add value in ways that focus on words like free or online, home, working from home. Essential is a great word. Insight, tips, people are looking for that sort of information, even things like bored, right, and boredom. There's enough to be alarmed about right now. So let's not use the call to action as a way to scare people more into taking action. Let's be empathetic with them. And then next slide. And keep your content bite-sized. So here in this slide, we're actually talking about, or specifically talking about email marketing. So not to sound contradictory to the stats we've shared so far, because yes, screen time is up and engagement is up, but that doesn't necessarily mean people have a lot of time for us to be long-winded. So part of being relevant and even empathetic is to acknowledge, by way of the length of your copy and message, that people have a lot on their minds right now, and you're willing to give them the most important, most digestible information across these media.
So as out of necessity, we're all doing new things now, and you're probably all trying something new just based on that necessity. But we would encourage you to embrace it. There are a lot of events that are being canceled this spring and this summer, and nothing replaces an in-person event, especially a fundraising event. But know that your audiences are likely hungry for some type of engagement, and they're likely missing that event. So you should find additional ways to get in front of them, whether that's a virtual event, webinar series, lunch and learns, all kinds of different things. And we would also encourage you not to compete with the coronavirus. I'll give you a good example. I'm on the Des Moines East High School Foundation Board, and one thing we identified immediately as we were canceling our signature event for this spring, by the way, was, will people want to give to scholarship funds, knowing that they could also be giving to all of these things that might be more urgent or more immediate needs? And so we're trying to identify the relevance there and make people connect that. I would imagine that regardless of the primary mission of all of the organizations that are on this call, they somehow will benefit individuals deeply affected by this. And you should encourage your audiences to remember that, and you should embrace it, so they don't think that you're competing with COVID-19 or the coronavirus efforts for their very precious money. As we click to the next slide, another opportunity in all of this as well is this is great time to get research, a great time to get feedback. However, don't be tone deaf. Don't ask questions of your audience that make it seem like we're either pretending like this isn't happening or we don't know that it's happening. Ask questions about it. Ask if they feel like your organization is doing enough related to this topic, which will remind them that you're trying to find that relevance, and you're trying to maybe alter your mission even just temporarily to make sure that it benefits things more specific to this than otherwise. And then last, this is the time to prepare. We click to the next slide. This is the time to prepare for when it's over. We're not sure when that's going to be. So certainly we're all altering. And for organizations on this call, that might mean a variety of things. It might mean altering communications practices. But you might find things that are beneficial even as we come out of this and we can get in person. It might still be beneficial to have virtual events or Zoom lunch and learns or whatever else. It might be altering the mission and the message a little bit to make sure that people understand that the good that you're doing now, whether it's the arts, whether it's something that is healthcare related, the good that we're doing now benefits individuals deeply affected by this, and it's for the good of all, and there's still some relevance there. But that might be something that we need to do, is alter our mission and how we state it and how we state our messaging going forward. So we have new audiences when we come out of this. This is an opportunity there too, by the way, is to identify those new audiences that we can reach out to that perhaps weren't audiences before because they didn't like to come to live events. They didn't like to go to live fundraisers. But if we're doing things virtually perhaps, or if we're doing things a different way and communicating in a different way, they might be more responsive. So with that, that wraps up our presentation and the message that we have for you today. We appreciate your time.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Eric and Jeff and Sally and Angie. I think if you wanted to come back, we can just wrap up for a couple of minutes before we head out. I think what Jeff and what Flynn Wright was saying was so helpful in light of Giving Tuesday coming up. And I think that Angie is going to share just briefly about Giving Tuesday and kind of the opportunity to take the next 12 days to really think about what we have heard and kind of create a plan out of that, plan of action. So Angie, did you want to make a mention there?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brianne. And thank you so much, Sally, for bringing Flynn Wright in, and to both of you for sharing. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up that in the coming days, you'll be getting more information. As Brianne said, there is a Giving Tuesday that's going to be celebrated really nationally on May 5, which is just right around the corner. And our team is working diligently with others in the community to help lift up really a Give DSM Day, where we will be offering to each of your organizations some tools that you can use to help promote your own messages to share across the community, but really collectively celebrating the important work of the sector and encouraging individuals to give. So just wanted to plant that seed with you, be watching for more information. Again, our team is working with some wonderful support to get you some templates and some things that can aid in your effort. So with that, I'll hand it back to Sally, and stay tuned for more from us.
Great. Well, I just want to echo thanks to Jeff and Eric for the opportunity to learn a little bit from the data. I love the focus on what we know as opposed to what we think, because it's very easy right now. This is new, and what we think may or may not be correct about what people are doing. I know personally, I've sent out a lot of emails with no, you don't hear back. And so it's hard to know that people are listening. And so it's great to have those data points and the confirmation that our constituents do want to hear from us, and there are best practices that we can be following so that we do it well and effectively. So I just want to thank you both for the opportunity to hear from you this morning and for the expertise that you bring to the table. And we'll kick it back to Brianne. I think we're going to break into small group conversations. Do you want me to cover what we're going to talk about, Brianne, or do you want to go through that?
Sure, you can tee up the breakout questions. I did see a note in the chat to ask about slides because you might not have your marketing folks on the call. We will send out these slides and the recording as we do every week. We try and get them out by Friday. Yeah, that'll be available to you. So great resource. Sally, if you wanted to just share the breakout questions.
Okay, so our breakout questions are going to be, and can I ask Jeff and Eric just one more quick question before we go into the breakout sessions, or is that going to throw us off time?
I think we'll be good.
Okay, so Jeff, I was wondering if you have any thoughts. You talked a lot about the digital platforms, which is great, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about direct mail at this point, or if you're getting any feedback about like the actual paper. A lot of our organizations do annual fund appeals, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot with that, but wondering if you have any thoughts about like the hard copy stuff at this point.
And I might say Jeff may have already departed the call. Sorry, I'm looking now to see if he's still here. So.
Oh, that's okay. I'm here.
Oh, he's here. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm here. I just can't start my video, but
Okay.
I'll answer the question anyway. I'm glad you asked that question. Mail always works. That is a common misconception. A common misconception is that mail is no longer valid. But think about how many emails you get versus how many pieces of mail are in your mailbox when you get home. And the best part now is that you're probably already home. And one of the highlights of your day might even be seeing the mailman come. So absolutely, mail always works, still works, and especially now. So I think putting out mailings is a great idea.
Great, Jeff. Thank you so much for letting me put you on the spot there. And thanks again for being here this morning. So we're going to break out and hopefully take some of what Jeff has shared, what Jeff and Eric have shared about cultivating new relationships and bite-sized content and confirming for us that customers do want to hear from us, clients, constituents, however you refer to them. And now is definitely the time to try some new things. So we'll break out and talk about, in all of the breakout groups, we'll talk about the same questions. The first one is, in what creative ways has your organization pivoted communication to embrace this new digital reality? We can't talk face-to-face. We can't meet with those donors, and we can't connect with our volunteers in the same way. So in what creative ways has your organization pivoted that maybe we can all learn from? And then what's something you're thinking about trying but aren't quite ready to leap into? And maybe you can expand on that in your groups to share what's holding you back or what you're worried about. And maybe we can get some group learning going to encourage people to do some of those things, try some of those new things that are going to hopefully yield results.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open all of the rooms. Reminder, we'll be recording the session with Ryan West in the main room, and then you have the opportunity to join us here again at any point. So I will Zoom you out. My dear co-hosts, you may have the opportunity to actually help folks turn their video on in your rooms. I have tried to give you those privileges, so we'll see if that works if people are having trouble with video. All right, see you later. Okay, let's keep going in the main room here to our discussion with, is it working, Sally? Did you get zoomed out to your room? Oops, she's frozen here maybe. All right, hopefully that's working today. Let's go ahead and then move over to our next half. Bridget, if you could just advance us out.
And this is Dustin. I see Stephanie on. Ryan, are you on as well?
I saw Ryan join us a couple minutes ago. Yeah. So Ryan, I can give you video privileges if you like. I'm putting that on.
My video is not working this morning.
Oh, okay. All right. That works. Well, I can, as long as I can hear you, that's good. Let me see if I can unmute Renee. Bridget, can you pull the slides up, please? The next slide. Okay. Well, if we don't have our slides with us, maybe having some issues. Maybe Bridget accidentally got zoomed out. Oops, let's see. She accidentally got zoomed out. So let's see if we can just kind of keep going from here. And if you wanted to just talk Ryan and Dustin and Stephanie, that'd be great.
Yeah, and thanks for those of you that are sticking around and for those of you that watch this later. With us is Ryan West and Stephanie Callahan from Iowa Workforce Development. I'm going to give them a little bit of time just to kind of give people an overview as to what they're seeing at Iowa Workforce Development and changes that they're trying to implement, and they would ask you to be patient with, I think. And ultimately, the biggest questions that I talked to Ryan about late last week came out of our helpline discussions, the individual one-on-one nonprofits, with the main focus being on with the new changes in the CARES Act related to kind of gig economy employees. how does this new PUA that I'll let Ryan and Stephanie kind of, how does that impact folks working with people that are 1099 or contract employers? And the other big question that we're seeing as well is with the federal government's CARES Act also talking about reimbursement for nonprofits, what kind of structure can people anticipate, and how would that actually impact budgeting and things that they should consider? So Ryan and Stephanie, the floor is yours. I'll likely ping you, but feel on some questions, but feel free to kind of give us an overview of what you're seeing and things that people should consider.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Stephanie, I'll go first, so just jump in over me wherever you want. Nice to see everybody on here. I see a lot of familiar names. I hope everybody's doing well through this. One thing right off the bat, Suzanne H., if you did not get your final question answered, will you just go ahead and email me? I had forwarded yours on, so since I seen you on here, I wanted to bug you. Welcome. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Dustin, for inviting us. Couple of things. So there's been a lot of guidance and stuff coming down the pike for unemployment insurance purposes, excuse me. And in a nutshell, I think I'll cover the PUA as David or as Dustin laid out. So PUA basically is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, and we are heavy on acronyms, so I apologize to everybody. That's what we do here in the unemployment insurance world. But PUA is basically designed for individuals who don't have wages and won't qualify under normal circumstances. So for those of you who don't know, when you file a claim, the system is going to go back and look 18 months. And over those 18 months, it's going to look at all the employers you've worked for, and it's going to try to determine if you've earned enough wages to qualify for a normal unemployment insurance claim. You have to have at least 2 quarters of wages. One of those quarters has to be about $1,700. The other one has to be about $900, give or take. And if you have that, it's going to qualify you for a normal unemployment insurance claim. Now, the unemployment weekly benefit that you make or that you get based on those amounts will be low. You'd qualify for, I think that the minimum amount is $87. So in the situation that we're talking about here with your group, most of these individuals or yourselves are going to qualify under that PUA bucket. Now, what we've noticed a lot lately, or what I've seen a lot lately, is we have a lot of people who are not only have a small business on the side, but they also have reported wages on the other side. So they're doing 2 different things. When you go to file a claim, you may qualify under the normal way because which is what they're going to go to first. And so that way may not necessarily be as much as what you get through your self-employed route with 1099 or your W-2s. But the system is set up that it's going to read those covered wages first. So just an FYI on that. Last week, we started to pay out the PUA claims. It took us some time to get everything set up. I think we're still one of a handful of states that are actually paying PUA. So we're in a good spot, all things considered. Each day now, we're seeing these come through and more individuals are starting to get paid in this bucket. And so we had thousands of applications. We had thousands more come in over the weekend. But we have a huge group that is working these specifically to go through each one. We have to go through each one manually to pay them out, to get them all the information we need. And when we need to reach out to somebody, we're doing that via email or strictly phone call. So PUA is really, in a nutshell, designed for those folks who won't qualify under normal circumstances. It's up to 39 weeks, and you will qualify for the FPUC. Again, I don't want to let anybody down with acronyms. The FPUC is the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. That's essentially the $600. Okay, so you get that on top of it. Now, one thing to remember, this really has nothing to do with the stimulus money of, $1,200, I believe. So there are scenarios where somebody may get a $1,200 deposit, their unemployment insurance deposit, and the $600 deposit all on the same day, just through kind of dumb luck on when you may have filed your claim. So those are kind of on the claimant side. On the actual charging side, we're looking further out. There's some things that they're going to benefit nonprofits, but where we are right now, if you watched the governor's press conference with Director Townsend, I believe it was either last week or the week before, forgive me, they're all kind of running together now. We've set up a trigger. So when the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund gets around, I believe we said $950 million, when it starts to drop to that amount, then a trigger will go into place and employers will then be charged for benefits moving forward. Right now, employers are not charged. So I know, in the nonprofit world, you guys are charged different, you're reimbursable employers. So it's just $1 for dollar. I think we have about 3,000 of those, 2,500 to 3,000 of those employers in the state. Those are typically schools, government entities, nonprofits, et cetera. The bulk of them, though, there's about 80,000 employers in the state. So 77,000, those are contributory, and they play a percentage based on a tax every quarter. Okay, so those are how the two different buckets are set up. So they kind of roll to their own rules. And on the reimbursable, I know it's been a little confusing, or emergency, or nonprofit organizations, government entities. Let me read you some of the guidance that came down. It's just a real quick paragraph, and Stephanie, jump in here if I'm off on any of this. But basically, it also provides for transfer to a state's account in the Unemployment Trust Fund from the federal unemployment account to allow partial reimbursements, generally 50% of the amount of payment in lieu of contribution. So essentially, the feds are going to pay half of that. Of what's due for government entities and nonprofit organizations when that time starts. Again, we haven't hit that trigger yet. The ultimate question is, full disclosure, not a corona virus, not a COVID-19 expert, when does this end? Being around in 2008, 9, 10 with Iowa Workforce Development, there are some similarities in a lot of the guidance that has come out for unemployment insurance purposes. One of the things I think we have to keep an eye on is, will there be extensions to this stuff? That's what started to happen during the recession. I'm not suggesting this is a recession, just that the guidance is very similar for unemployment insurance purposes, which actually helped us because it allowed us to get things moving quicker because we already had a lot of this stuff in place. But so that's going to be the ultimate question. Right now, the $600 payments, for you or those folks who may be giving it that are working for you, those are going to pay out until the end of July 25th. There's been no talk of an extension. As we get into July, I anticipate that will be a heavily debated conversation, and that will cause a lot of angst with some of our folks who are drawing unemployment because you get used to that money, obviously. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. Those are a few months out, obviously. But in a real nutshell, that is kind of how it works on both the employer side and on the claimant side, which is those individuals who draw on unemployment. I would suggest that by the end of this week, early part of next week, the bulk of people who are eligible for PUA who have filed, that is the pandemic unemployment assistance for those folks who don't qualify the normal way, will have started to receive their benefits. When that happens, then it starts to alleviate phone calls, which have been historic for us numbers-wise. That starts to free up a lot of other stuff, and it allows us to move through things a little quickly. We really had to get over this hurdle of April, mid-March to the end of April, to start to see a little bit of kind of balancing out. So, Stephanie, is there anything you'd like to add there? I don't mean to talk the whole time, so I'm sorry.
No, I think you covered all of the main points. The only thing that I would say too is the 50% that's going to be paid for reimbursable employers, that actually looks like from the guidance it's going to go through the end of December. So that has a little bit different date than that $600.
Yeah, good. Fair enough. That's a great point. So, one of the things you get all this guidance from the Department of Labor, and then they kind of drop it on all the states, and in all of the states virtually have a different system they use. That's a whole nother webinar conference call that could be had for several weeks. But so they drop it on you, then you got to really scramble to put it together. So you're walking this fine line. You want to get it done as quickly as you can. You got people who want their money, understand all of that stuff. I've been in those scenarios. I get it, but you got to make sure you try to get it as accurately as you can, because this thing looming behind us is when we come in and get audited, all the states will, for how they're administering this. So it's hurry up and get stuff going, but then, you got to make sure you're trying to do it as correctly as you can as well. So Dustin, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add or if you'd like to kind of go into questions. Really, that's kind of where we at with it. I think by the end of this week, each week we're getting to a place where we're better and that we're getting more people paid. And that's really what our focus has been. How quickly can we get people going? I know there's been people who have filed and they got the denial letter. It's actually, the denial letter is a green sheet. Again, we call it that because it comes out on green paper. The reason it comes out on green paper is so people read it. You know, we get a lot of people, I think, who throw a lot of stuff away, and it's just kind of a psychological thing. But that paper really is saying, hey, you don't qualify under normal circumstances. That's something that we're hoping we would have a new form that would be going out by the next kind of huge unemployment surge that we had. Unfortunately, we weren't in that position to have that. But so that basically says, hey, when you get those, or if you have people who haven't filed yet and they do, that doesn't mean they're disqualified. That just means that they won't qualify under normal circumstances. What happens then is we shift them into another bucket, and that's where they get thrown into that PUA bucket. I encourage everybody to go out to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov, click on the COVID-19 tab. That tab will take you into a bunch of updated information. Most importantly, there'll be a PUA tab in there, and it really lays out what are required that we need from you. And that stuff's laid out by the Department of Labor. Remember, unemployment insurance is a real kind of interesting beast because the states administer it, but 99.9% of all of our funding is federal. So we're kind of in this middle weird realm where we have the state and the feds, and we're trying to administer it all for everybody. So, but as guidance comes out, we're trying to put that on. I don't foresee any different guidance coming out now. I think where we are is where we are. The only changes would be is if they're extended. PUA goes till the end of this year, December 26th. So there's time to certainly draw out the 39 weeks. Above all, though, we hope to get people into work, and hopefully things are open up by then.
Yeah, and I just add a couple things, Ryan. I put a message in the chat box, so if anybody wants to ask a question, feel free. And we do have one from Michelle. But before I get to that, I mean, Ryan and Stephanie, what's kind of the volume that you're seeing, and are you seeing somewhat of a slowdown at this point?
Well, I'll go. So, you know, I was fortunately or unfortunately, I guess when I look at it, I was here during the 2008-9 time, and I took a lot of the calls then. And, you know, we would have a busy day then. We'd take, you know, on some of the busiest days, I think we were at 4,000 or 5,000 calls a day. I mean, we've had days here we've had 35,000 calls in one day. So we've eclipsed a lot of records, quote unquote, that I didn't think we'd ever see. It's slowing down now. I think the last 4 weeks have been record setting for not only Iowa, but all states. Yeah. What I noticed though, or what kind of you see is there's this huge initial surge when things like this happen, where people who aren't familiar with unemployment are going, you know, they're dealing with a lot of things, and unemployment insurance is just one of them. And so it heightens stuff, and people want their money. And so understandably. And so once you can kind of get over that initial 3 to 4 weeks, then things start to kind of ease out a little bit. And I really, you know, the $600 thing, that's a large amount of money, an extra amount of money. To put that in perspective, you know, in 2008-9, we had something similar to that. I don't know if any of you guys recall that, or if you had anything to do with unemployment insurance, but it was $25 at that time. So, and that was every time you got your regular unemployment check, then you would get an extra $25. So, yeah, it is slowing down. The call volume, the bulk of the call volume are for people who've just filed, are in that kind of 2-week window where they're not sure if they're doing it right. They need to reset their PIN number. There's just a lot of basic unemployment insurance stuff. So that's probably 85% of the stuff. Stephanie, I don't know if you have a different perspective on that. To answer your question though, yeah, I think it is. We're starting to see it subside, and that's because people are getting paid.
I would agree with you, Ryan. I would only say the other thing is we have one other program that we're getting rolled out, and I think once we have everything out and paying, which will be in the next week or two, I think that's when we'll really start to see a slowdown. Okay.
Well, the question we got is from Michelle King, and she asked, I direct a nonprofit that engages only 1099 contract employees. Their nonprofit has never dealt with an unemployment claim before, but just received notice of a claim for one of our people. If they tick the box, I am not protesting the claim, does the nonprofit get charged, or are there other ramifications we should be aware of?
So Stephanie, and by the way, Stephanie's legal counsel for us, so it's easy for me to say, hey, Stephanie, what do you think about this answer, and be a chicken here. But so the best answer on this is, yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. And a normal one. So when somebody files a claim, you'll get that notice of claim. So there's two ways we send those out. One is paper, which is about 75,000 of our employers in this. Actually, I think it's about 74,000 of our employers. The only reason I know these stats, guys, is because I have to work and stuff every day. They receive the notice through the mail. The other way is through SIDES. So if you hear SIDES come up, SIDES is an electronic way of getting that notice. But that notice of claim will come out to you. You have 10 days to protest. I'm assuming this is because of a COVID-related issue, Michelle. I would suggest if you're not protesting it, you don't have to send that in, and don't worry about. Okay, it is COVID-related, yeah. So there's no ramifications at this point because we haven't hit that $940 million in the trust fund. I don't know where we are exactly on that. Or how soon we are to that. Again, that's going to determine how long this kind of stays drawn out, where stuff is closed and people are continuing to draw unemployment. Remember, the more that people draw unemployment, the more that comes out of the unemployment trust fund. Now, all that federal stuff, the $600 extra, the employers don't have to worry about that. So take that amount as an employer and throw that out of your head. That has nothing to do with you guys. You're not charged for any of that, okay? But the amount of money right now, because we haven't hit that trigger mark. So to answer your question, the only way you would potentially be on the hook for it, for lack of a better term, would be if we get to a point where that trust fund lowers. At this point, I would suggest, since it's COVID related, your folks are eligible to file for unemployment. You're just kind of in a holding pattern until later notification. Steph, if there's anything you want to add on that, please.
Okay, so I will add this. If you only have 1099 employees, you probably haven't reported wages that are in that 18-month period. You likely got the notice of claim because your employee had other wages and qualified for a regular state claim. So you got the notice of claim not because you were in our system, but because they might have reported you as their last employer. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to just send your email address, I can send you a quick email and I can maybe answer your question specifically about that employee. But if you are not protesting the claim and you do not have wages in their base period, then no, you wouldn't be charged at any point.
Yeah, that was going to be my question too, Stephanie. For this new PUA, my assumption would be is it doesn't act like the old regular system under covered wages. Is that correct? Or are people still, if it's a 1099 or a contract employee, are they still going to notify that the contractor for that quote unquote employee?
So under PUA, the self-employed 1099 employees, that type of thing, we don't notify the employer, is my understanding, and that's because the feds pay those wages. You would never be charged for those. In this situation, again, I think it's that hybrid situation where the person had both 1099 wages and actual wages or W-2 wages. And the problem, well, not the problem, but under PUA, the only way you get to PUA is if you don't have an eligible state claim. So that's why we have to go through that process. And part of that state claim is giving notice to all employers who have paid wages in the last 18 months and any employer identified as the last employer.
Yeah, that's extremely helpful, and what I kind of assume. I have a couple other questions for you guys that I've seen come up with a lot of other clients. If you have somebody who resigned and they don't want to come back to work, would they be eligible for any of your programs?
Stephanie, jump in here wherever. So depends on the situation. That's a good question. So if people are not wanting to come back and just because they want to try draw unemployment, then we want to be notified of that so we can set up a fact finding and ensure that they're not drawing unemployment when they shouldn't be, when there's work available by the employer. I think what we're still telling people is if the employee has a COVID-19 related kind of doctor's note, for lack of a better term, then they are eligible to not work. But under any other circumstances where the employer is asking the employee to work, then the employee is expected to be at work. One of the fears of the $600, I'm sure you guys can all imagine, is, hey, wait a minute, we may have some folks who are going to get paid more to not work than to work. And so trying to ensure that we are doing the best we can to help employers with that is certainly what we're trying to do. Stephanie, I don't know if there's anything else on that part of it. I think that's still kind of, it sounds simple, but it's really what we're trying to do.
And I think it's really challenging, and wouldn't want to put you guys on the spot, because I know that, we've been dealing a lot with nonprofits and for-profits with that question about people that don't want to come back and they feel, at risk because of COVID-19. How do you deal with that from an HR perspective is a real challenge outside of before you even get to, can they file an unemployment claim? We're seeing that across the board on a lot of clients. Thank you guys so much. That's been extremely helpful and appreciate giving some time to us.
Absolutely. We have about 120 seconds. People are going to be flying back here now for the next couple minutes, but we might have time for one quick question if you had one more, Dustin, while we've got Ryan on the line.
No, I don't know. Stephanie looked like she was going to talk. I don't know if you had anything else to add on that, to your point, as Ryan mentioned, I think people are going to see, especially people not making a high wage, folks making a decision that where they might want to stay home and make more money. But I don't know if Stephanie, if you were going to add something to that.
I was just going to put in a plug for our website. But if you go to our website, we have a banner up and on any of our COVID pages, I believe, that will link you to how to report if an employee is refusing or declining to come back to work.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. Thank you and Ryan again.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Dustin. Nice to see everybody. A lot of familiar faces there. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Dustin, for really being a resource to everybody who is looking to get these questions answered. I know it can range from really kind of high level stuff to the very tactical, what happens if I click this box kind of a thing. So that's great that we have experts who we can work with to help our nonprofits navigate this situation. So Bridget, I think if we have maybe one more slide just to kind of close out. I did want to welcome everybody back. We've got about 10 seconds before our rooms are going to officially close. So I hope that everybody has been having some really great conversations in the breakout rooms. I've been so interested to see just the recaps from our conversation leaders and just the value of the opportunity to share ideas and challenges. So as I welcome you all back to this main room and we close out our time together, I hope that you are inspired to maybe think a little bit differently about your marketing and some opportunities that you might have in this time. And I also wanted to share what we'll be talking about next week. So next week we'll have Courtney Duranda from TDT CPAs and Advisors doing our introductory presentation, and she'll be talking about financial scenario planning and what nonprofits can be doing to kind of figure out what's the best case, what's the worst case, and kind of what is some middle ground, and looking at, how are you going to analyze your cash flow, especially in circumstances where, you might be missing out on event revenue, or your programming might have shifted. So she'll really help us in the first 20 minutes next week to think about, what is some work that you and your boards can be doing, some conversations that you can have around analyzing your finances. So I know that's a topic many have been really interested in. I wanted to make also a final plug that our nonprofit adaptation grant deadline for round 2 is this Friday. I've had a lot of good conversations and seen a lot of applications come through. So please shoot me an email if you want to set up some time, or the application itself is pretty straightforward. So thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to seeing you at our community circle next week, same time, same place. Until then, be well, and it's great to see you all. Have a good week. Bye.